Hi, this is StrategyCast, where smart marketers and bold business thinkers share the plays behind brand breakthroughs. I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avasec Communications. Right now, sales cycles are stretching, buyers are more cautious, and budgets are under the microscope. In this episode, we're breaking down how emotionally intelligent sales and marketing leaders can protect margin, rebuild trust, and actually shorten sales cycles when uncertainty is driving hesitation. You'll hear how empathy changes buying behavior, why stalled deals are becoming more common, and what marketing and sales must do together to stay relevant when only a small fraction of buyers are in market. My guest today is my friend Colleen Stanley, a leading voice in emotionally intelligence for sales. She's worked alongside long, complex buying environments and has seen firsthand what separates teams that stall from those that keep moving forward.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast, Colleen.
Lori, thanks for having me as your guest. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Oh my gosh, you are so brilliant when it comes to all things sales. And I think the combination of sales and marketing today is really what is going to differentiate brands from the pack. We're going to really dive into some incredible topics. Before we get there, tell us a little bit about your journey.
So I was really fortunate, Lori, to get started with a small company. Today, I recognize they're called startups, and it is a startup that blew up. So for people like me who had little experience, I was given some great opportunities. And so I was a sales rep, a regional manager, and then eventually became VP of sales. And after 10 years at this company, Varsity Spirit Corporation, who, by the way, is now the largest in their industry in the world. They post revenues of about $3 billion. So,
Wow.
what a great place to start, right?
Man.
I decided to enter this career full time. So I moved out to Denver, Colorado. I didn't know anyone, but, I'm like, I'm getting into speaking and training.
Yeah.
This is what youthful ignorance and passion will do for you.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I made it. So I started with a Sandler sales training franchise, worked for them for 2.5 years, and then spun off on my own. About 10 years into teaching sales training, sales leaders, I discovered emotional intelligence. And it was really brought to me by two colleagues. And they had been using emotional intelligence in their leadership work. And they said, Colleen, you have got to bring this into your sales processes.
Right.
And Lori, I'm telling you, I had never heard the word emotional intelligence,
Right.
much less put it in the same sentence as sales. However, once I started really looking and studying this body of work, I really determined that this was the knowing and doing gap. It was going to give people 100% of the skills they needed to be successful in sales. So that's how I landed where I'm today.
Well, I tell you, we're really glad that you did, by the way. Do you think that is the number one reason why sales stalls? Is not understanding the EI behind what it really takes to get the deal done?
Well, of course, I'm going to come from that perspective. So let's do
Right.
that disclaimer. Here's what I've seen. When deals start stalling, human nature is I'm going to push harder, right? So I'm going to talk more. I'm going to sell more. I'm going to remind that prospect or customer, if it's, you're upselling an existing customer, I'm going to remind them of all the benefits. It literally flies in the face of how human beings like to interact and be influenced. And so when you're pushing too hard, it will kick off that part of the brain, the amygdala, which triggers off a fight or flight response. And in some personalities, the harder you push, regardless if you have the right solution, they're going to push back because no one likes not having control and choice. So yes, I do think not being able to read the room, read the opportunity, manage your own emotions to recognize, ooh, I'm starting to move into pushing mode rather than understanding what's going on here mode.
People don't like to feel as though they've been sold to. And there's so much
Yeah.
regret when you do feel that way. And I think that is, it doesn't matter what we're selling. At the end of the day, it's all about creating that relationship with that buyer to make
Hmm.
them feel important and as though, they're a perfect fit for what it might be that you are selling. Um, we talked about the fact that we're seeing a rise in deals that just stop.
Hmm.
There's no communication. People are going dark. There's follow up, but nothing is happening. What is driving that behavior?
Well, overall, I think you have to look at the macro economy. And so a lot of times what we do is if we're in sales and marketing, we can get into our bubbles, but we don't realize, and I think, smart marketers like yourself do, but there has been a decrease in trust in institutions.
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter what the institution is, journalism, lawyering, doctors. It has decreased, Lori, as much as from 74% to 20% since
Wow.
1964.
Yeah.
So if you take a look, people just aren't trusting what they're reading or they're hearing. And so some of that is because the institutions have fallen short. And some of it, you've got to take a look at artificial intelligence. I think subconsciously people are asking themselves, what's really real? I
Right.
mean, am I reading something real or was it written by a real person? Am I talking to somebody real? And you're not. You're talking to a bot that sounds pretty good. So I think there's a lot going on there. The tariffs, depending on the industry you're in, it's
Yeah.
stalling deals.
Well,
And yeah, go ahead. Mhm.
and I think a lot of that has to do with fear, right? Is it fear? I
Yes.
mean, the excuse most people use is we've got budget constraints. We're not going to be able to, do the deal this year, or we're not going to be able to do it because you're just, more expensive than the next tier down. They use it as an excuse to stop the sales program,
Hmm.
or they're just afraid. I'm like, what is going to happen next? Should I invest in this or not?
Yes. Here's, I'm going to go back to the price. So there have been teams that, have had to raise the price due to a variety of reasons, tariffs being one. And so what they're not doing a great job of is explaining the price increase,
The
which
value,
decreases trust.
right?
And so they're saying things like, well, everyone's having to do it. Now, at that point, a customer's brain, a prospect's brain, really illogically says, I don't care. I only care about myself. And so sometimes it's the way a price increase is being communicated that stalls the deal because they're sitting there going, I don't trust this. Even
Right.
though they logically know the price increase is validated, and it's probably just a pass through.
Right. And I think what is a hard signal for sales and marketing teams to see in that situation is it a trust issue or is it just not a good fit for the
Hmm.
client?
And that is where marketing comes in because
Right.
I will tell you, everyone, if you've gone through any type of sales training, marketing training, you've heard of the ideal client profile. Now, here's what I think happens on the sales side of the business. We look at the guardrails and you've got, demographics, psychographics, firmographics, all of those things. But what salespeople do, because they're optimistic, a wonderful EQ skill, by the way, they start rationalizing. So when an opportunity doesn't fit within the ideal client profile bucket, they'll sit there and say something like, well, 20 years ago, I actually closed a piece of business that didn't fit this profile. And so I believe marketing's responsibility, both from a communication with the sales leader, is having them understand, listen, you can't sell and close business with somebody that just doesn't match your ideal client profile. You might get a one-off once in a while, but you can't grow a company with trying to sell to one-offs. So I
Well,
think the optimism gets them in trouble.
I think so too. And with buyers out there not trusting at least 50% of the products that they purchase each and every day, there's huge upside to really develop that trust. And I want to
Hmm.
focus in on that for a little while because there are a lot of untrustworthy actions that marketing can deploy in the market and sales can deploy in the market as well. We know that it's the number one barrier to purchase. Trust is.
Hmm.
And we know
Hmm.
that the average person needs to interact with a brand 26 times in order to make a buying decision. And we also know that if your sales cycle is 18 months or 3 years or 2 months,
Hmm.
time is not your friend at all. So,
Right.
what are we doing to create trust throughout that? You've established that it's not always a price issue,
Hmm.
but it can be a hesitation. So, what can marketers do to overcome those barriers and to reinforce trust in an authentic and real way?
So, there's a couple of things here. And let me maybe move to where you and I have had the discussion where marketing and sales needs to be more aligned. That's a conversation that's gone on for how many decades, right? But let me give you a quick example. I think marketing can do a good job, through the website. They will have videos, testimonials. We have got great problem solving experts on our team. We give great customer service. Here's the disconnect. So the person meets with the salesperson that has not been trained in just basic consultative selling skills, and they show up and do a verbal vomit. Okay, wait a minute. The
Yeah,
brand you built told me you had problem solvers. What just showed up is not a problem solver.
right.
They're a solution dumper. All right. We provide great customer service. You got the testimonials, except maybe in that particular branch, you don't have people answering the phone, returning calls, setting up clear next steps. Hey, I don't have the answer right now, but I'm going to get an answer back to you by 4 p.m. today. And even if I don't have an answer, I'm going to give you a call. So that's what builds trust is when the marketing branding aligns with the behavior being shown by the sales organization.
How difficult is it for sales only teams to develop trust without the marketing engine?
I would say today it's harder than it was back when I got started in
Right.
sales because you were the brand, right? There was no internet. Yes, I'm 100 years old, diet and exercise, pay attention, people.
Yeah.
Okay. But I would say today it's harder. And then I also think it's easier. And I think part of it is because for a while, the marketing and branding were dictating it. But now, because people are getting so skeptical, they are relying, it's starting to move. Gartner shows research by 2030, the research is going to be showing that B2B buyers actually want that human interaction. So it's been going away from the human interaction. And now I think you're going to start seeing people go to the human interaction. So you are the brand. And that's a good thing, but that means you've got to be teaching your people not only selling skills, but soft skills.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Avocet goes to great lengths through our strategic development process, through a program called our Trust Architecture, to do exactly what you're talking about. A lot of the strategic insights that we obtain through a market analysis, voice of customer, segmentation analysis,
Hmm.
industry analysis, competitive analysis, so on and so forth, is just a starting point. And that's where a lot of people stop the insight. We take that a step further. We're developing what is most meaningful from a messaging standpoint, what is most meaningful from a continuity standpoint, from a look and feel standpoint, from a behavior standpoint, to really be able to open the door for sales. What we don't
Hmm.
want to happen is sales enter the door and that be broken down. So we take it a step further, and then we are providing insights to CSR, commercial teams, new business development, strategic account managers on what you can do to really create that equality from messaging in
Hmm.
person when it comes to making the deal happen. It's something that we saw years and years and years ago. We were developing great marketing programs and they were stalling because we weren't training sales the way they needed to be to implement the marketing that was out in the market. So it's something that we think really does help accelerate trust when everything
Hmm.
is working, everyone is working hand in glove with one another.
It really is. And what I've seen a lot, and I'm going to take let's just take a generic example where you're getting ready to launch a new product, right? And you've done all the research you're talking about. What often doesn't happen is just what you and your team do. So a salesperson gets this new product or service. They literally haven't been taught the messaging, call it value proposition sales messaging. And if they have not, I promise you, they default to feature advantage benefit. Instead of it talks about what the product does versus the problems it solves and the associated emotion. if that problem isn't solved. So I see a big disconnect when they don't have the marketing function working with them, because even seasoned salespeople will default to what it does versus the problems it solves and the associated emotion. So I
Yeah.
think it's great that your team is doing that. Now, on the sales organization's part, they're not going to like hearing this, but they've got to memorize some of that messaging.
They
It's got
do.
to sound very conversational. It's got to sound like it's the first time it came out. But if they don't take that messaging and keep it very tight to just get a conversation started, well, it turns into a 30-minute commercial versus a 30-second. And then
Yeah.
trust is broken down because they're putting a fork in their eye.
That's exactly right. And I think one of the other issues that happens there, what we see is that listening is pushed aside. Listening, I love the empathy that you talk about from a sales standpoint. To me, it is so incredibly important, and empathy really can't happen without listening. How does empathy accelerate trust in these situations?
Well, if you take a look, there's so many power skills out there under the empathy umbrella.
Yeah.
However, empathy is the power skill for dealing with the unspoken objection in the room, which is where distrust lies, right? And so this is where hesitancy lies. And so a person with well-developed empathy has also developed their focus skills. And as Daniel Goleman has said more than once, focus has become a flabby skill. So we're wondering why salespeople aren't demonstrating empathy or active listening. They literally have lost their ability to focus. I
Yeah,
mean, most people can't go without checking their cell phone for 30 minutes.
I know.
They go into, so think about it. Anything you do repeatedly becomes a habit. And unfortunately, most organizations are allowing people to show up to meetings and they're paying partial attention. And the same thing can happen in that meeting. So where I think trust is broken down is they're truly not listening, but they're not listening and looking for the nonverbal cues. See, that's where the real conversation is. People going, oh my gosh, we do need to put this new ERP system in, but you know what? I'm already working 60 hours a week. This is going to take me 70. The last time we did this was a nightmare. And that's the thoughts going on in that potential customer's mind. And unless that salesperson is tuning into the day in their life, they won't even bring up that conversation. So they
Yeah.
miss the meeting after the meeting.
How is that truly an innate misjudgment, or can it be learned? There's so many innate. Well, I think the ability to sell, by the way, is innate. The teaching empathy may not be. And I think that we can teach people how to sell, but those that truly have that natural grit to do it, I think are very, very special people. And, which came first, the chicken or the egg? In
Right.
this situation, do you think that the innate sales can be taught empathy or vice versa?
Yes, the good news is with emotional intelligence skills, if you have focus, desire, and commitment, they can be improved. So IQ sometimes is said, but EQ can be taught. Now, what happens with soft skills, people don't recognize they're just like a muscle. They can be practiced. So they
Right.
kind of stay up here in the theory area. So everybody likes to say, oh, yeah, empathy is saying what somebody's thinking or feeling.
Yeah.
Here's the reality. In order for you to understand what somebody's thinking or feeling, you've got to carve out quiet time and you've got to tune into your own emotions first. What are you thinking or feeling?
Hmm.
And see, nobody wants to carve out quiet time because we all got the busy badge on,
Yeah.
and that's a waste of time. I mean, I'm not doing something, but if you think about it, think about a time, Lori, maybe a member of your team, a customer, somebody disappointed you. That's actually a gift because you can sit with that disappointment. Now, you don't go down the rabbit hole and of despair, but you know what that emotion feels like. And
Yeah.
that makes you more able to sense it in a conversation. You know what embarrassment feels like.
Mhm.
But see, that means you've got to sit with yourself because if you don't know yourself, you can't know other people.
Right.
That's why empathy is showing a decline in our society, besides a lot of things, social media and some of
Yeah.
those,
Our phone. Yeah.
side notes. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I want to go back to talking about sales and marketing integration because
Hmm.
it is so important. We know that it is, and we know that it can be the reason you win or lose, period. Where do you most often see sales and marketing teams misaligned today?
Where I see it, and I encourage companies to do this, I would like to see marketing riding along and listening along.
Mm.
And so if they're working with the SDR team, listen to those phone calls. How do they come in? What's in the emails? If you have field salespeople, you get out in the car because I can tell you this, how a prospect or customer speaks, that can be the language you put in your marketing copy. I
Yeah.
know when I have worked in distribution, a CEO once said to me, because they were doing pretty well. Most of the time we work with customers that are doing pretty well. And he said, listen, here's the deal. Now listen to the words.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. I have professional visitors on my team, not professional salespeople. Now, professional visitors, well, guess what? That's the lingo in that language. That's what you hear when you're in front of the customer that sometimes doesn't get translated back when the salesperson's meeting with the marketing team. See, they
Yeah.
forget the person said that, but marketing's going to pick up that language.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Thank you for that. I wanted to make sure that we got that point across. And as we are progressing here, I think that one of the most important things is to take a look at, we all celebrate the win. It's the most
Hmm.
important thing, right? It feels so great. But that loss is as equally important to study and truly learn from. You've got a great example of working with IBM on the epiphany they had with that exact situation.
Yes. And so we were working with our sales manager, great group of people, and we were conducting how to do a effective win-loss analysis. And here's what the team discovered. They said, you know what? We're actually doing a pretty good job of analyzing our losses. We are not doing a good job of analyzing our wins. And
Oh,
it
that's
was,
right.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, and this is a pretty sophisticated, sales organization.
Yeah.
And we talked about it. Now, they had already gone through the emotional intelligence training. And you know what we came up with? That part of your brain, the amygdala, is the survival brain.
Right.
So what are you going to look at? You're going to look at why'd we lose? We don't want that to happen again. That's why the brain remembers things that happen to you that are bad more than things that are good. I
Yeah.
mean, Lori, we just came off of football season, right? So what's everybody talking about? A
Yeah.
fumble, an interception, or a great touchdown, or a 20-yard run. So you remember the fumble or the
Right.
interception. But you got to study the patterns for winning, and that can go back to ideal client profile. You know what? Our competitor has a gap, and we are doing a great job of messaging to point out that gap.
Yeah.
There could be a trigger event that's going on that wasn't here a year ago. So when you study it, you just set yourself up for more success because here's how we win. So
Yeah.
we win, like I said, we win with customers that are actually doing fairly well. We
I
learn that from studying our win-loss analysis.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one thing that's also very, very interesting here is marketing being able to step in and have a voice of customer interview with these individuals. So
Hmm.
riding along and listening and being in the room, I think is very important. But having a third party help with those VOCs really, I believe, leads to incredible intel and insight and replication through the sales process. And even, dare I say, finding additional or new ICPs that are more fine-tuned based on what we're learning from that big win.
And they will tell you often, let's flip it back to a loss. They'll be more truthful with somebody like you than sometimes the salesperson.
Yeah,
Because if you're a good salesperson, they like you. And
yeah.
so this is a human being that decided not to give you this piece of business or take the business. And so there's a whole bunch of emotions associated with that. So they may give the salesperson fluff to let them down easy because they've been a very good salesperson, but maybe the company's falling short. They're not staying ahead of innovation. Maybe they're having quality delivery issues. Someone like yourself can get to the real deal of why they lost
You know,
and
we
why they win. Hmm.
we just had that happen. We were conducting a VOC interview for an international manufacturer of hard goods, and we interviewed several clients that had fired the client. And one individual in particular, our team member who does the interviewing happens to have incredible empathy and just can really dive into like the soft underbelly to ask the right questions and know when to ask them. And
Hmm.
he was able to recreate so much trust in that interaction. By the end of the voice of customer interview, um, he had asked our team member to have the CEO give him a call and that he'd
Wow.
love to get together and discuss perhaps a re-engagement. And there were lots of things that led to that, by the way. It wasn't just the lucky phone call that happened. There was a competitor that was under delivering. It was timing. It's all those things, right? But having those conversations is the point. Just delivers such a wealth of information that marketing through messaging, through tactics, ultimately leading to the right strategy can really make a big difference.
Well, and Lori, what I'm hearing is just somebody maybe was listening to the customer,
Yeah,
right? And
right.
so, it's interesting. I think sometimes we just want to overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be the first person that said it. A basic human need is to be understood and heard. And what I've observed in my lifetime is people that don't feel like they're being heard, they get very loud, they get very noisy, and that's when they go into fight or flight.
Right.
And so if you can simply demonstrate that, which is what I think your member of your team did so beautifully, I just want to be heard without somebody interrupting, overselling, justifying, blaming. And this is what happens when you've got two human beings getting together that don't have emotional intelligence. The salesperson can start emotionally reacting when they're actually hearing the truth from a customer. So that's why your voices of experience are so important.
Well, they really are. As buyers become more cautious and risk adverse, how do you see EI becoming a competitive advantage for sales and marketing teams, like in the short term? We've established that there's a lot happening right now with tariffs, with uncertainty, so on
Mhm.
and so forth. What can we do now to make a real difference?
Well, I think one of the things you can do on any sales conversation, and this is using the EQ skill of empathy, is you bring up the elephant in the room. So this is really, it's almost comical to me. When I've worked with sales teams, I'll do a whiteboard exercise. Okay, what are all the objections you hear?
Yeah.
And then they can fill a whiteboard. When would you like to hear them? Sooner or later? Though I say sooner, when do you hear? Later. Okay, is anybody seeing the disconnect here? Now, what happens is for some reason, salespeople do not want to bring up the elephant in the room. So it could be a prior past experience. It could be an existing relationship with the customer. Are you guys that much better for the price point? It could be timing. And so unless you are comfortable bringing up that elephant in the room, that's where deals are going to stall. They're going to stay status quo. And it's a really, it's an influence skill. I'll take a little side note here. When my husband was a prosecutor, they are trained in influence. Okay, it may not seem like it because
Yeah.
the joke is nobody likes lawyers until they need one, right? And so anyway, when he would be doing jury selection, he'd call the elephant in the room. And he'd
Yeah.
say, "How many of you don't want to be here?" All the hands went up. They were kind of looking like, and he goes, "You got families, you've got businesses to run, and in this particular case, you're like, why are we even here? Like a
Right.
drug deal gone bad, right?" So he is saying what they're thinking or feeling.
So
He's
smart.
connecting. He's connecting. Then he could lay out his expertise
Hmm.
because this is the only country in the world that asks you to only do one thing. We don't
Yeah.
ask you for military service. We don't ask you for this. We just ask you to serve. But he was good at calling the elephant in the room. Actually, you're not going to like my client. You're not going to like him at all. That's influence.
Yeah.
That's being real. That's what people crave.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. Before we end our conversation today, I have to bring up an incredible book that you recently wrote. And I am lucky enough to be featured in a chapter about an incredible mentor that I had, which is my father. What led to you, I mean, all this experience that led to be the mentor who matters? An incredible book that's on market right now.
Well, I would say in my 10 years at Varsity, and actually throughout my whole life, Lori, I have had mentors that have shown up. And so I understand the importance of mentorship. And they have been people that at times when I had self-doubt, they encouraged me. I've had people that have modeled resiliency and grit. I have had people give me opportunities when I wasn't ready. I hadn't even raised my hand, but they saw something in me that I didn't even see in them myself. So every morning I start with gratitude. And what I have been doing for years, I kind of went through this mental checklist of my mentors, all the way from Sister Emma, who was my grade school principal, to Jan Gruber, my high school dance teacher that probably got me into teaching and performing, all the way to bosses, so to speak. And so I realized it was time for these stories to be told. And I believe right now, and I'll just go on for one more minute, I think mentorship is more important than ever
Agreed.
because the pace of change is too great. You just can't go it alone anymore. You've got some unintended consequences of technology, which is breaking down communication, community. And so I felt like the timing was right and the message needed to get out there because mentors
Well,
matter.
they really do, and you've done an incredible job with that. And I think it's a gift that a lot of people, it's the gift that never, that never stops giving is mentorship. I've got
Yes.
people outside of the company that I mentor on a monthly basis, and it creates so much happiness and love
Yes.
in my own heart to see them progress in an environment that might be awesome 90% of the time or awesome 10% of the time. And they're just stronger and better to just having someone, that listens and provides some ideology on how they might approach something. I think it's good for all of us. And of course, as I mentioned, I had an incredible mentor. Both my parents were incredible mentors,
Right.
but specifically in business, my dad was phenomenal. So I appreciate that. And I know that you also had a father that was an incredible mentor to you.
Well, actually, it was more my bosses because part of the reason I wrote the book is my brother John was killed at the age of 14 in a car accident. And like many families, the family fell apart. So, not any judgment on my father's, but I had a lot of people that after the family kind of fell apart, I had people stepping up that could take the role of some of the things my parents weren't able to provide at that point. They were struggling with the death of a son, the marriage fell apart.
That's
And
hard.
so I can say I had a lot of fathers throughout my life,
Yeah,
but they weren't technically my fathers.
I love that. Well, thank you for that. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
Best way would be go to our website, which is salesleadershipdevelopment.com, or I'm very active on LinkedIn. So go there. I'm posting, several times a week. And so I'd love to connect with you with any further questions or just even share your stories of what you guys are doing in sales and marketing. I'll pass them on to you, Lori, and
I tell
or
you,
even
that'd be great.
mentorship.
Yeah, there we go. That's a deal.
Yes.
And if you'd like to get in contact with me, LinkedIn is the best spot. Lori Sartorius Jones there. Colleen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.